Breakfast puppies?
This podcast contains adult language and content and is meant for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome. You're listening to the Glitterbois.
One of the most commonly asked questions on Reddit, Discord, other forums that I visit or follow that have a heavy discussion of Palladium Games is, how do I get started with Palladium Games? More frequently, how do I get started with Rifts?
Yeah.
And I think we could use this episode as an introduction to both, because Rifts is kind of the gateway to the Megaverse, so it's a great place to get started with Palladium system concepts.
Yeah, and quick side note, though, I think most of the Palladium books that aren't things like the Rifter or anything like that, they're fairly self-contained. If you pick up the Robotech RPG, if you pick up Recon, there are other books, but everything you need to start playing is in that one.
Yeah. For the most part, every system is very well contained. There are a handful of exceptions that I personally feel needed more substance in their core book, but we can talk about those much later down the road.
Yeah.
Rifts is definitely one that I see a lot of people asking questions about, and I get it. Rifts has had a couple of variants come out. There's the original version, with the thong women on the cover. There's the Ultimate Edition with the badass line walker and the whatever the hell it is coming out of a rift on the cover. But then there's also the Savage Rifts and so on. And Rifts by now has 100+ books in its line. All the world books, all the source books, all the dimension books, the spin-off books, the war series, the Chaos Earth stuff. It can be daunting when you are approaching a catalog this huge, trying to figure out how to get started.
But if you're looking for just where to start, my advice would be just to get one of the editions of Rifts. If you like the Savage World system, go with that. But just remember that the line of books coming for that is smaller than the original Palladium.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's talk about the Savage Edition then. The Savage Edition requires, you got to get the Savage World's core book. So there's the core rules. The last one that I personally familiarized myself with was the Explorers Edition. I understand that they have now a new one out called Adventure Edition. I haven't spent much time delving into it.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I also know that just from the files in my Drive-Thru catalog that I believe most of, if not all of the Savage Rifts books, which initially came out under the Explorers Edition, have been updated to the Adventure Edition version. But still, you need the core rules for that. You need the Savage Worlds edition of choice. You need the Player's Guide, a separate book, which is the Rifts, Savage Worlds Savage Rifts book. You need the GM's book. I think this is GM's handbook or something like that. And I think you probably also need to get the Foes of North America book.
Yeah.
God, it's been a while since I looked at the Savage versions because I had them and then I kind of decided to go back to the OG.
Yeah. Honestly, the Savage Worlds, while I appreciate the update of the system into the Savage Worlds playing system, I prefer the old Palladiums myself.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons for that is what you need to get started is a number 2 pencil with a big eraser, a handful of dice, a lined paper, and one book.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's very little that's actually required. Now you can do what we do in, this COVID day and age, and, you can have spreadsheets that everyone can edit, and you can have this and you can have that. But all you need to play Rifts in Palladium system is some basic supplies, which if you're looking into Rifts, you probably already have, and then a book. And that's how you get started. I would recommend the Ultimate Edition personally because it has expanded RCCs and OCCs more than the original did. But just for fun and nostalgia, I would also recommend picking up a cheapo copy of the original just because it's fun.
Yes, the original is a good book to have on the shelf. Wrapping up the Savage Worlds part of it, though, before we move on and focus entirely on the OG, as you say, dice, you need the same set of dice in order to play. You need a standard set of gaming dice that's got the D4, the D6, the D8, the D10, D12, and D20. And, if you're one of those fancy people, the D percentile.
Yeah.
Pencil, paper, there you go. With Savage Worlds, in addition to the dice, you also need a deck of playing cards because that's how they do their own initiative. You don't need the deck for original OG Palladium system.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I got to say about Savage Worlds. So now focusing entirely on the Rift system, you just need one book.
That one book will sit alone on a bookcase for about 2 weeks. And then suddenly it'll be joined by 16 more. And that's normal.
Yeah, if you feed it after midnight, unfortunately, it spawns a vast catalog.
If you're anything like me, you're a lore junkie. I have books that I will never play in just because I like to read. I like to read about worlds. I like to read about concepts. It informs me as a player and it informs me as a GM of what's out there. It leads to a richness of the world, which I still believe is unmatched in the Palladium system. But for just base starting, you need a book and you need maybe $5 worth of dice. And that's it. You will need extra D6s. So you can steal that out of literally any board game. Crown Royal bag is optional. But
it's one of the world's most expensive dice bags, but it comes with free booze.
Yeah. That's really it. You also need to find yourself a gaming group that understands rifts.
Oh, well. Let's save that for a deeper discussion, finding a good group, because that again, we'll start to dive into social assumptions similar to what we did with the Game Master talk last time.
Yeah.
But so, okay, physical materials, the dice, you do need that set. And as you say, additional D6s help. I'd also say additional D20s would help, especially if you're rolling a lot of attacks. If you're firing a lot of missiles, you're probably going to want some more D20s. And if you want to have your attacks and defenses separate, it's always a good idea to have more D20s. And of course, having more dice is always better than less dice. Always.
Yeah, even in our modern era where a lot of this is done online.
See if you can convince your GM to let you roll the real stuff.
Yeah.
Now, once you have the book, the paper, the dice, and the unspoken assumptions such as an imagination and friends, you also need to consider what of the lore that you want to get into. But Matthew has mentioned the lore. I love reading the vast tomes of Palladium Megaversal lore. But there are certain books that are generally seen as more useful than others, more applicable to any game than just a regional one. And the list, in my opinion, of the requisite books that you want to get if you want to expand your game beyond the core book. And again, the Core Rifts book, the Ultimate Edition, there's so much opportunity just in that book alone that you might not need any of the other books. Yeah. But again, if you want to expand further, you got to get the source book 1. The source book, it was originally just called Rift's source book. And then they started expanding the source book line. So they revised it as source book 1 revised. I recommend getting that book. It's really useful. It's just got a lot of expanded lore on the world, on some of the major antagonists. It's got just a few additional races. It's got some extra gear. It's just a valuable, good book to have. The Book of Magic. Yes. If you want magic, get the Book of Magic. By the time the Rift's Ultimate Edition came out, the Book of Magic was about 5 years out of date, but it's still very valid. And it has way more spells than the Ultimate Edition. If you want to play a warlock kind of character or a line walker who has a significantly larger array of power to choose from, get the Book of Magic.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
And I mentioned the warlock. I also then strongly recommend getting the Rift's Conversion book.
That's where I was going next, yeah. And that's because you cannot tie into all the other worlds with that.
Oh, yeah. Well, so there was originally the Rift's Conversion book, which was from the 90s, if not the 80s. No, it was the 90s because Rift's 90s. And it had conversions to like Palladium Fantasy and Beyond the Supernatural and a handful of other things. Well, as Palladium started making more and more and more and more and more and more stuff, they had to make more and more conversions. So the Rift's conversion book got re-released as a revised edition called Conversion Book 1, similar to the source book. And then they added Pantheons of the Megaverse, so if you want gods and whatnot. And then they added...
That is a good book to have.
Yeah. They also added the Dark conversions, so if you want like demons and the entities from Beyond the Supernatural and Nightbane stuff, that's where you look. I think there's only 3 conversion books, though.
Yeah, I still have the early 90s original, and that contains a whole bunch of new OCCs and RCCs too.
Such as the Warlock.
I know we just listed off a ton of stuff. I would say that you will probably, if you enjoy yourself in this world, pick most of that up. But to answer the question of what you need to get started in Rifts, you need a book. One. Singular. And that's not, and the DM needs to purchase their version of the book. No. It's the same book. It's all there for you. There's a whole world laid out. Now, the world goes into much more exhausting detail within the confines of the series, but it's just one. You need one book. So pick up Rifts and grab your dice. That's literally all you need.
I would caution against adding certain books higher to your priority of expansions to get. Some of them are more valuable than others. If you wish to run games and you really want to step up your GMing game for Rifts, again, just beyond the one crucial book, I don't recommend jumping into the Game Master Guide, because the Game Master Guide is not what you think it's going to be. It is not like the Dungeons and Dragons DMG. The Rift's GMG is more like an index. It has an index of all of the OCCs up till the year 2000, because that's when the GMG was released. And it has quick stat references for all of the weapons, vehicles, armors, and such not that were released up to that point. But it doesn't actually have much in the way of game master advice or information. If you want that, instead, put the Rift's Adventure Guide much higher up on your list. There's a lot of really good advice in there, a lot of plot hooks, a lot of adventure ideas. It's just a much more GM-centric book than the actual GM's guide.
As your collection grows, and it will over time, I would also like to toss the indexes out there, because Palladium has an awful lot going for it. I've waxed on about it time and time again, so I'm not going to again. But one of the drawbacks of the Palladium system is the vast amount of knowledge, and where the hell you saw that one thing that you desperately need to do this right now. The indexes help with that. I believe there is, how many are there?
I never even bothered myself with the indexes, because by the time they come out, they're outdated. And so I'm just like, I enjoy flipping through the books and building up my own memory of where things are. Yeah.
Well, I've never GM'd a Palladium game. Not since, just making it up and mainly going off the pictures in junior high. So when I'm frantically looking for something, it's usually just about to be my turn and I need to know now.
Fair point.
So
yeah,
in that instance, and seeing as how most of my collection, with the exception of the Ultimate Edition Rifts book, is the very old stuff, that would be something that's very handy for me.
And aside from Rift, other settings, pretty much always the same, one book.
Yeah.
For the fantasy, you just need the core book. For Beyond the well, I can't speak for Beyond the Supernatural. I don't know that one well myself. But for TMNT, you just need the core book. For Robotech, I'm confused on, because there's Robotech, the RPG, and then there's Robotech 2, Sentinels, the RPG, and then there's the later version, the Shadow Chronicles RPG. If there's any one of those that you would recommend, Matthew, as the book to pick up and start playing with for today's new Robotech gamer, which one? It
honestly depends on which era you wish to play in. Each setting is a complete book. So if you're looking to play the Shadow Chronicles after the Infinite Invasion, then that's the one you want to pick up. If you're looking just to play Macross, SDF1 era, then you're just going to want to pick up the role-playing game. Same with Masters, Infinite Invasion, Sentinels. Each one is its own era. And I think that's the exception to the rule, because those were cobbled together things that were Frankensteined by Carl Masick into this, semi-continuous story. So the Palladium system kind of followed that design, where each stood alone but was interconnected to the others. So with Robotech, just which era of Robotech do you want to play with? That's the book you grab.
Okay.
We all know it's Macross, so just grab the original.
Yeah, again, most of the others, you just need the single book. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any exceptions to that. However, even if you are looking into the other systems, I still strongly recommend any new players, any newcomers to the Palladium system, get the Rift's Ultimate Edition. It is in many ways the core of the Megaverse, and a lot of the mechanics, in my opinion, are better explained, better laid out, better organized in the Ultimate Edition than they are in just about any other Palladium core rule book. It is
agree.
Yeah, it is great as a central reference.
I recall when I first came in contact with Rifts on the original book being a lot more confused than when I got the Ultimate Edition in my hands later. It's just better laid out. Now, if you're already vaguely familiar with it and you want to restart, yeah, you could pick up the old one. But yeah, I'm going to second NPC. You grab that Ultimate Edition.
Yeah. And I think that's it. Dice.
Yeah, that's what you need to get started.
Pens and paper, some friends, and imagination.
Yeah. Go buy a book. All right. We'll catch you next time. Thank you.
Thanks.
You've been listening to The Glitterbois, a Palladium Books fan podcast. Glitterbois, Rifts, the Megaverse, and all other such topics are the property of Kevin Siembieda and Palladium Books. Please buy all their stuff and help keep them in print and making more games. You can order directly at palladiumbooks.com, and their entire catalog is available digitally at Drive-Thru RPG as well. Our opening music is 8-Bit Bass and Lead by Furby Guy from freesound.org. This closing music is Caravana by Philip Gross, available at freemusicarchive.org. All sound effects used are self-made or acquired via Creative Commons 0 license. If you like what you have heard, find us on Twitter and Facebook as The Glitterbois. That's BOIS. And check us out online at breakfastpuppies.com/glitterbois. And also join us on the Breakfast Puppies Network Discord at breakfastpuppies.com/discord. And if you want to help us out, please spread the word and help us build a community. Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you next time.